The Fox Girl's tribe cast her out for being too wild, but I craved her untamed desires. The banishment. The Council of Peaks had spoken, and their judgment echoed through the crystal caves like thunder. Zarya knelt before the 7 elders, her bronze-feathered wings trembling not with fear, but with barely contained rage. Her amber eyes blazed as the High Elder pronounced her fate. "You have brought chaos to our harmonious ways," the ancient hawk woman declared, her white plumage stark against the morning light filtering through ice formations. "Your passions run too hot, your desires too fierce. You hunt with aggression rather than grace, laugh when you should meditate, and refuse the suppressant rituals that keep our kind civilized." Zarya's jaw clenched. The rituals, those bitter teas and chanted mantras designed to dull every feeling, every hunger. She'd tried to conform, truly tried, but her spirit rebelled against the numbness they demanded. Her body craved touch, movement, intensity. Her heart yearned for connection that burned rather than whispered. "For the safety of the flock, we cast you out," the elder continued. "You may keep nothing but the clothes you wear. Descend from these peaks and never return." The younger hawks avoided her gaze as guards escorted her to the cliff's edge. Only her sister Mira whispered a tearful goodbye, pressing a small pendant into Zarya's palm before being pulled away. The wind caught Zarya's wings as she leapt, but instead of soaring, she felt herself falling, not just through air, but through the shattered remnants of everything she'd known. Her wings ached as she glided down through clouds toward the green valleys below. A storm was building on the horizon, dark and violent, matching the tempest in her chest. Lightning split the sky as rain began to fall, and Zarya realized she had nowhere to go, no one to shelter her from either the weather or her own wild heart. The Wanderer's Refuge. The storm had battered Zarya mercilessly as she struggled through the valley, her wings too waterlogged to fly. Rain plastered her dark hair to her face, and her simple tunic clung to her shivering body. Through the downpour she glimpsed golden light, a workshop with smoke rising from its chimney, the rhythmic clang of hammer on metal cutting through the thunder. She collapsed against the wooden door just as it swung open. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground, and she found herself staring into concerned gray eyes framed by a weathered, handsome face. Dark stubble shadowed his jaw, and soot streaked his muscular forearms. "Easy now," the man murmured, his voice deep and warm as he carried her inside. "You're safe." Kieran Thorne laid the strange woman near his forge, the heat immediately beginning to dry her unusual clothing. But it was her wings that made his breath catch, magnificent bronze feathers that spread across his floor, each one catching the firelight like burnished metal. She wasn't human, yet she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. He brought thick blankets and warm broth, kneeling beside her as consciousness fully returned to her amber eyes. "I'm Kieran," he said softly. "This is my forge. You're welcome to stay until the storm passes." Zarya studied him warily, her survival instincts sharp despite her exhaustion, but something in his gaze held no judgment, no fear, only genuine concern and something else she couldn't quite name. Curiosity, perhaps, or recognition. "Zarya," she managed, her voice hoarse, "I have nowhere else to go." "Then stay," he replied simply, as if offering sanctuary to a winged stranger was the most natural thing in the world. Over the following days, Kieran asked no questions about her origins, giving her space to heal. He worked his forge during the day, crafting beautiful blades and intricate metalwork, while Zarya recovered her strength. She watched him work, mesmerized by the fluid power in his movements, the focus in his expression. At night they sat by the fire,
Kieran would sketch designs in his journal, while Zarya preened her wings, both comfortable in the quiet companionship. Yet beneath the surface, something simmered. Glances that lingered too long, fingers that almost touched when passing food, dreams that left them both restless and aching. One evening, as Kieran added wood to the fire, Zarya spoke. "Why did you come here, to this isolated place?" He settled back, shadows dancing across his features. "The world wanted me to be something I wasn't, proper, restrained. I craved more than polite conversations and empty pleasures, so I left to find what actually made me feel alive." Zarya's wings rustled, her pulse quickening. "And have you found it?" Kieran's eyes met hers, and the air between them suddenly felt charged with more than forge heat. "I'm beginning to think I have."
Embers ignite. The tension between them grew unbearable over the next week. Zarya's body had healed, but she made no move to leave. Kieran didn't ask her to. Instead, their orbits drew closer, his hand steadying her elbow when she stumbled, her fingers brushing soot from his cheek after a long day at the forge, their shoulders touching as they sat by the fire. Kieran found himself obsessed with her wings, the way they shifted with her moods, folding tight when she was uncertain, spreading slightly when she relaxed. He longed to touch them, to trace each bronze feather, but held back, unsure if such intimacy would be welcome. Zarya, for her part, felt her suppressed desires roaring back to life. Every time Kieran removed his shirt to work the forge, revealing his muscled back and strong shoulders, she wanted to run her hands across his skin. When he smiled at something she said, warmth pooled low in her belly. The elders had called these feelings dangerous, shameful, but with Kieran, they felt like coming home. Another storm arrived one evening, more violent than the first. Wind howled around the workshop as rain hammered the roof. Zarya paced near the windows, her wings agitated, energy crackling through her body like the lightning outside. "The storms make you restless," observed Kieran, setting aside the dagger he'd been sharpening. "Everything makes me restless," Zarya admitted, turning to face him. "My entire life I've been told my passions are wrong, that I feel too much, want too much. They exiled me for refusing to become numb." Kieran stood, crossing the space between them with deliberate steps. "What do you want, Zarya?" The question hung in the charged air. Thunder rumbled as she met his gaze, her amber eyes blazing with everything she'd held back. "I want to stop pretending I don't burn for you. I want to feel your hands on my skin, your lips on mine. I want to know if you dream of me the way I dream of you, desperately, hungrily." "Every night," Kieran confessed, his voice rough with desire. "I dream of touching your wings, of hearing you gasp my name. I dream of learning every sound you make when pleasure takes you." Zarya closed the final distance between them, her body pressing against his. "Then stop dreaming," she whispered against his mouth. "Make it real." Kieran's restraint shattered. His lips claimed hers in a kiss that was both answer and question, tender and consuming. Zarya moaned into his mouth, her hands fisting in his shirt as his arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her impossibly closer. Her wings spread instinctively, enveloping them both in bronze feathers as the kiss deepened. Kieran's hands slid up her spine, finally touching the base of her wings. The sensation made Zarya cry out, her body arching into his touch. The wings were sensitive, connected to every nerve in her body, and his gentle exploration sent waves of pleasure through her. "Beautiful," Kieran breathed between kisses, his fingers stroking through her feathers. "You're absolutely beautiful when you let yourself feel."
The union of fire. Kieran lifted Zarya effortlessly, carrying her to the thick firs he kept near the forge where the warmth was constant. He laid her down gently, his eyes drinking in the sight of her,
wings spread like a living tapestry beneath her, chest rising and falling with anticipation, amber eyes dark with desire. "I want to worship every part of you," he murmured, settling beside her. "Tell me if anything is too much." Zarya reached for him, pulling him down into another searing kiss. "Nothing with you could ever be too much," she whispered against his lips. "I've spent my whole life being told I was too much. Show me what it's like to be exactly enough." His hands traced the curves of her body with reverent slowness, the dip of her waist, the swell of her hips, the soft skin of her thighs. Each touch drew gasps and sighs from Zarya, sounds she'd been taught to suppress, now flowing freely. When his lips followed the path his hands had taken, trailing kisses down her neck and across her collarbone, she trembled beneath him. Zarya's own hands explored the landscape of his body, the hard planes of his chest, the ridges of muscle along his back, the strength in his shoulders. She marveled at how perfectly they fit together, how his weight pressing her into the furs felt like safety rather than confinement. "Your wings," Kieran breathed, his fingers returning to stroke through the bronze feathers. "May I?" "Please," Zarya gasped, and when his lips pressed gentle kisses along the sensitive arch where wing met shoulder blade, she cried out in ecstasy. The sensation was overwhelming, pleasure radiating from every feather he touched, spreading through her entire body in waves. Their clothing became obstacles quickly discarded. Skin met skin, and the world narrowed to just the two of them. The heat of the forge, the storm raging outside, the perfect friction of their bodies moving together. Zarya's wings wrapped around Kieran, holding him close as they found their rhythm, her soft cries mingling with his deeper groans. "Zarya," he whispered her name like a prayer, his forehead pressed to hers as they moved together. "You're perfect, so perfect." She pulled him into a desperate kiss, her body arching to meet his, pleasure building like the crescendo of thunder outside. When release finally claimed them both, Zarya's wings trembled and spread wide, feathers shimmering in the firelight as she called his name. They collapsed together, breathless and tangled in each other's arms. Kieran's fingers traced lazy patterns on her skin, while Zarya's wings folded around them both like a cocoon, creating their own private world. "I was afraid," Zarya admitted softly, her head resting on his chest. "Afraid that if someone truly saw my wild heart, they'd reject me like the clan did." Kieran tilted her face up to meet his gaze. "Your wild heart is exactly what I love. Not despite your passion, but because of it. You make me feel alive in ways I'd forgotten were possible." Zarya kissed him again, slow and deep. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Not just tonight. Always." "Always," Kieran promised, sealing the vow with another kiss as the storm outside finally began to quiet, leaving only the crackle of the forge and the sound of their contented breathing. Wings unbound. Months passed, and the workshop by the river transformed into a true home. Zarya and Kieran built a life that honored both their natures, her wildness and his creative passion intertwining in perfect harmony. Each morning, Zarya would soar above the valley, her bronze wings catching the sunrise as she hunted or simply flew for the pure joy of it. She'd return with game for their meals or interesting stones and wood that caught her eye, landing in the yard with windswept hair and flushed cheeks. Kieran would always pause his work to greet her with a kiss, never tiring of the sight of her descending from the sky. In the afternoons, while Kieran worked the forge, Zarya discovered her own craft. She began weaving, using fibers from forest plants, incorporating her own molted feathers into intricate tapestries that told stories of freedom and passion. Kieran would forge delicate wire frames and clasps, and together they created art that merchants from distant towns sought eagerly. But it was the evenings they treasured most. After washing away the day's work in the river, they'd prepare meals together, their movements synchronized from practice and intimacy. They'd eat by the fire, sharing stories and dreams, often interrupted by kisses that led them back to the firs where their passion remained as fierce as that first stormy night. "Do you ever regret it?" Kieran asked one evening, his fingers combing gently through her feathers as she lay against his chest. "Losing your clan?" Zarya considered, then shook her head. "They wanted me to be less than I am. You helped me understand that my wildness isn't a flaw, it's my truth. Here, with you, I'm finally whole." She shifted to straddle him, her wings spreading slightly for balance, her eyes gleaming with familiar hunger. "Besides," she added with a mischievous smile, "they never made me feel like this." Kieran's hands slid up her thighs, pulling her closer. Like what? Cherished, desired, free. She leaned down to capture his lips, wildly, perfectly loved. Their lovemaking that night was different from the desperate passion of their first joining, no less intense, but deeper, infused with the security of knowing this wasn't temporary. Zarya's soft moans mixed with Kieran's whispered endearance as they moved together with practiced familiarity, knowing exactly how to bring each other to the heights of pleasure. News of the hawk spirit woman and her human partner spread through the valley. Some were curious, some judgmental, but most saw only two people who'd found something rare and precious. Occasionally, other outcasts would find their way to the workshop, spirits or humans who didn't fit conventional molds, and Zarya and Kieran would offer shelter, advice, and proof that different didn't mean wrong. One dawn, as they lay tangled together watching the sunrise through the window, Kieran traced the pendant Zarya still wore, the one her sister had given her at exile. "Do you think you'll ever see her again?" he asked. "Perhaps," Zarya murmured, "but whether I do or not, I've found my true family, right here." She kissed him slowly, her wings folding around them both, and in that perfect moment they knew they'd discovered what the clan could never understand, that wildness shared with the right person isn't chaos, but the most beautiful form of freedom.